So we're doing Parasha Meditation Metzora. That meditation or that parasha is often neglected as it hides behind Tasriya that they go together, like they're appended together. So Parashat Metzora also deals with the purification process of tzara'at. So that's a spiritual disease that's commonly translated as leprosy, but it's more really correct to translate it as psoriasis. It's not really leprosy. Over a century ago, Hawaiians with leprosy were exiled to a quarantined settlement in Hawaiian island of Molokai. And it was a very contagious disease that started with a rose-colored mark on the skin, but in the end, people would lose limbs from that disease. So they were in very strict seclusion, quarantine. Even family visits took place from behind a glass wall. So the patients were stigmatized as unclean and sinful, often ostracized by close family. Later, they realized that really the disease they had in Hawaii was not connected with a biblical disease, and they changed its name to Hansen's disease. And so, although we prefer not to blame the victim in our time, still the disease of tzara'at indicates that in Metzora, the name of the Pasha, indicate that there is a connection between the victim and the illness that the person received. Metzora literally means motzi ra. He's like emanating evil. So even though it seems like a natural so this sickness is therefore a natural consequence for someone whose entire essence has turned into evil in speech and action. But even so, there is still hope for him, because there's a prescribed rectification ritual in which this person can actually be rectified and receive the highest moral integrity. So what's the underlying cause of tzara'at? So it's the bad character trait of arrogance. In Hebrew, it's called, in Hebrew, it's called ga'ava, right? And so this person who has this infliction of tzara'at, what he has to do, he has to be brought to the Kohen, and if the Kohen decides if he's afflicted or not, then he has to order 2 live birds, cedar wood and crimson. That's called tola'at shani. This is made from a worm that gives that crimson dye color, and the hyssop. And through all of this, he shall be purified after he finished having the symptoms of the tzara'at. So what we see here is that the part that's used for the purification, the tola'at, the worm, which is lowly, and the hyssop, which is a lowly plant that grows near the ground and it's very low maintenance. This is to help heal him from his too much arrogance and being filled with yeshut, separate existence. Because a person who's arrogant, and we all fall prey to this, and that's perhaps why we also in our time got this disease that causes us to have to be quarantined. So a person that's full of himself, there's no room for God. That person disconnects himself from God. God and I cannot live in the same world, says Hashem, in the same world of someone that's arrogant. The arrogant and I cannot live in the same world, because there's no room And being stuck in his own independent existence, it prevents that person from really experiencing God's all-inclusive essence of Ein od milvado. There's nothing besides God. So it's the ritual he has to do is extremely humiliating. Like it says, he has to, first of all, be outside of the camp. He's ostracized. And he has to cover his upper lip with a mask, right? And then he has to do something we don't have to do, Baruch Hashem, which is he has to call out impure, impure, tameh, tameh, both to the people who pass by and even to himself, to always remember what happened to him because of his arrogance. And this is to help him to get from haughtiness to humility, because no matter how far we turn from God and how much we're entrapped in the Yetzirah, Hashem always gives us a chance to return to him. So that's why the first step is to be brought to the Kohen, who is a descendant of Aharon, who correspond to the Sphira of Hod, which is connected with humility. And therefore, the Kohen can open the heavenly gates for the afflicted to return and cleave to Hashem due to his humility. And the first step in the rectification process is for the person who has tzara'at to even just be willing to come and submit himself to the Kohen. That in itself could be humiliating for some people. And the next step is to take the 2 pure live birds. And that alludes to the 2 different paths in the service of Hashem. First, recognition of the greatness of the Creator, and that leads to humility. And then the second is the awareness of our own lowliness, which leads to the recognition of Hashem. So it's like a catch-22. Just as it's impossible to thoroughly recognize our own lowliness, except when we recognize Hashem's greatness, in the same way, is it impossible to recognize Hashem's greatness without uttermost humility and submission. The 2 birds teach us that the only way to uproot arrogance completely is by serving Hashem through both of these ways together. This process is sealed with cedar wood, hyssop, and worm-dyed crimson wool, which teaches us that even if a person's heart was haughty like the cedar, which is the tallest kind of tree, he should lower himself to become like a hyssop and like a worm. So get ready for the meditation, make yourself comfortable, and relax, 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 relax even more. And become aware of how your body rests on your chair or on the cushion, and take several deep breaths, relaxing even more. Scan your day or your week for episodes where you felt arrogant about a certain accomplishment, momentarily forgetting how your very achievement is in Hashem's hand alone. Tune into this conceited feeling of taking excessive credit for your deeds that only alienates you from God and from others. Where does your arrogance come from? Perhaps an underlying insecurity causes your ego to hold on to greatness. Perhaps you're trying to drown out an underlying voice that cries, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, with a prideful counter voice chirping some form of, I'm so great, I'm so great, I'm so great. Think about how wealth, beauty, health, and smarts are never guaranteed for life. We exercise no control over them. At any given moment, a person may lose all of his material and spiritual attributes that makes him so proud. Hashem is in control of our lives. We didn't enter this world on our own, and we have no idea when and how we will meet our end. Meditate on how every one of your good qualities and accomplishments are nothing but Hashem's special blessing for which to be grateful. Take this moment to realize how the particular achievement that made you excessively proud is a divine blessing. Mentally thank Hashem for enabling you to reach this realization. Now, tune into an episode where you felt low and unworthy. Realize how this too is from Hashem. Take a few deep breaths and resolve to accept Hashem's will even within your dark lowliness. Imagine being a tiny drop of water in a vast ocean. Take a few breaths. Notice how you're connected to the greater whole. Envision a ray of light emanating from the sun coming down to evaporate you. Imagine how you, being a tiny drop, rise up as vapor towards the sky. Visualize yourself becoming part of a cloud. Become aware of how your separate existence is melting away, allowing you to integrate into the greater whole. Now realize how your darkest moments are orchestrated from above to eventually bring you closer to Hashem. Your talents, too, emanate from Him and are channels for His lights. Thank Hashem for allowing you to become an instrument to spread His light in the world. Thank Hashem for all the great things that you do. It's possible to serve Hashem not only when we feel enlightened, but even when we're down and low, feeling spiritually impure. When we go through times of darkness and doom, when we feel how far from Hashem, sunken in impurity, the main way to serve Him is by accepting Hashem's will with love. Even when we find ourselves sitting alone outside of the camp, declaring impure, impure. If we accept Hashem's will at these times of darkness, that in itself is a complete rectification. In this way, we can serve Hashem through our lows no less than through our highs. Okay. So you can come out. Let's see.